God's Crooked Lines is a Spanish psychological thriller released in 2022. It's directed by Oriol Paulo, a filmmaker known for tightly constructed mystery puzzles like The Invisible Guest and Mirage. The film is based on a famous 1979 novel by Torquato Luca de Teda and is set in that same late 1970s period. After premiering at the San Sebastian International Film Festival in September 2022, it was released theatrically in Spain in October and then globally on Netflix in December, which is where most viewers discovered it. The image shows the Netflix poster for God's Crooked Lines, centered on Alice Gould standing in a sterile psychiatric corridor, clutching her white institutional gown with 4 male patients behind her and the title looming beside her, immediately framing the film as tense, claustrophobic, and psychologically charged. The story revolves around Alice Gould de Almenara, played by Barbara Lenny, who is the engine of the entire movie. Lenny's performance is critical because the film only works if you believe her as both a brilliant investigator and a potentially unstable patient. The other key figure is Dr. Samuel Alvar, portrayed by Eduard Fernandez, the calm and authoritative director of the psychiatric hospital. Loreto Mauleon plays Dr. Montserrat Castel, a doctor who becomes increasingly unsure about Alice's diagnosis, while Javier Beltran appears as Dr. Cesar Ariano, the more procedural voice of the institution. Outside the asylum, David Selvas plays Heliodoro, Alice's husband, whose actions and motives are deeply suspect. Several patients, especially Ignacio Urqueta and the twins, Romulo and Remo, serve as emotional anchors and possible evidence within the closed system. The film is set almost entirely inside a private psychiatric institution in 1979 Spain. This matters because doctors hold enormous power, patient rights are limited, and records carry more weight than personal testimony. Once someone is labeled mentally ill, disproving that label becomes almost impossible. The asylum is clean, elegant, and orderly, but that surface beauty hides a system where truth is defined by authority. Alice voluntarily enters the hospital, claiming she suffers from paranoia. According to her, this is a cover. She says she's a private investigator hired to look into the suspicious death of a patient named Damian, whose supposed suicide doesn't add up. To legitimize her admission, she presents a recommendation letter attributed to a respected doctor named Donadio. From the very beginning, the movie gives you 2 explanations and refuses to commit to either. Alice is either running a dangerous undercover investigation, or she's already deep inside a delusion. Inside the institution, Alice behaves exactly like a detective. She observes routines, studies patient relationships, asks precise questions, and keeps mental notes. But every one of these behaviors can also be read as a symptom. Her confidence can be seen as grandiosity. Her certainty can be seen as obsession. Dr. Alvar frames her intelligence as part of the illness, arguing that she constructed an elaborate story to avoid facing reality. The film constantly runs 2 interpretations in parallel. In Alice's version, she's being sabotaged because she's close to the truth. In the institution's version, she previously attempted to poison her husband, was legally committed, and invented the investigation as a coping mechanism. Evidence appears to support both sides, often in the same scene. Alice builds relationships with patients who help her reconstruct what happened to Damian. These interactions are crucial because they function as proof inside a sealed environment. But the film never confirms whether Alice is genuinely helping these patients or subtly manipulating them to fit her theory. Even her compassion is ambiguous. A major crack in Alice's credibility comes when a man claiming to be Raimundo Garcia del Olmo appears, and Alice fails to recognize him. This should collapse her story. Instead, she adapts instantly, proposing that this man is an imposter planted to discredit her. That moment defines the movie. Every contradiction doesn't end the story, it generates a new explanation. Eventually, Alice identifies another patient, Ojeda, as the killer of Damian, motivated by jealousy and internal dynamics within the ward. The police become involved, Ojeda is arrested, and it looks like Alice has proven herself. But solving the crime does not automatically prove she's sane. A delusional person can still be intelligent, persuasive, and correct about specific facts. In the final moments, just as Alice is close to release, Dr. Donadio himself appears, contradicting Alice's account of the letter and her admission. Alice's reaction is panic and recalculation. The film cuts off without resolving the contradiction. It doesn't ask whether Alice is right, it asks whether certainty is even possible inside a system built on authority and records. Compared to the novel, which ultimately confirms Alice's illness, the film deliberately chooses ambiguity. That choice frustrates some viewers, but is entirely intentional. The theme is power deciding truth, not truth revealing power. On IMDb, the film sits around a 7.0 out of 10, reflecting solid appreciation mixed with division over its length and ending. My verdict is, God's Crooked Lines is a demanding but rewarding psychological thriller anchored by an exceptional central performance. If you need clear answers, it may feel unsatisfying. But if you're willing to sit with uncertainty, it's a sharp, unsettling exploration of how easily reality can bend when institutions control the narrative.